So at the property where I live, there's a field in the back of us, and to get to that field, there's a 600 or 800 foot, what's called an easement. It's just a long path through the field. And since the cars have been going back and forth through there, that's created this little path. And what my kids like to do if we're in the back field is they like to sit in the front seat and grab the wheel and drive the truck, and they almost make a little game. Now my kids are 7, 5, and even the 2-year-old likes to do this too, but they like to try to stay on the road. They veer a little to the left, and maybe they veer a little to the right, but they try to stay on the path. Now as they get towards the end where it gets onto the main road, there's a culvert which has a deep ditch on one side and a power line pole. And in order to get to the road, you have to go between on top of the culvert between the deep ditch and the power line pole. So as the kids are driving down the field, they are completely satisfied, feeling like, boy, they can do this. They're driving, no problem. But as they get to the end, they get a little frightened. See, they don't want to hit that power pole, and they don't want to drive the truck into the ditch. But, they're not realizing the whole time that Daddy is the one that's controlling the pedals, and that at any moment Daddy can grab that wheel if he needs to and veer it to the left and veer it to the right. If they were 600 foot in the back and started to go too far to the right and were to hit my neighbor's fence, I would gently grab the wheel and help them to straighten it out. See, sin tells us that we're independent of God, but really we're more like the kids driving the wheel. See, God gives us this availability to drive this wheel. And what he wants to do is for us to recognize that we couldn't have even grabbed the wheel. We couldn't have even been promised our next breath if it wasn't for him. And even the fact that the whole time while we're doing it, we're not independent of him. He's right there with us. I like what it says in Colossians 1:15 through 17. It says, he, being Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. See, as the kids are driving, as they get a little closer to the end, they're still thinking that they're the one that are actually doing the driving, and they get this fear and this anxiety that they're either going to go into the ditch or hit the power pole because they're not realizing that Daddy is the one there. They're thinking that they're the one that's in control. Well, you know what? If they would just rest and be assured that Daddy will take the wheel when they can no longer control it, there would be no anxiety on their behalf. And life is a lot like that. As we realize that whether we are in good times or bad times, our Dad has our back, and he's the one that sets the parameters of how far to the right or how far to the left that we can go. He'll not allow us to go any further because in him all things hold together. I like how Paul puts it in Acts 17:24 and 25. He says, the God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. We get this notion that we can create our next breath. Well, we can't even create the next time our heart is going to beat. No, all things are held together in Christ. If an atom was not to hold together, there would become an atomic explosion. All things hold together in Christ. The whole universe, from the smallest of atoms to the universe itself, holds together because of Christ. Even dark matter, which we have no idea what it is, which constitutes about 95% of the known universe, that holds together. Christ is the one that is really holding all these things together, for they were created in him and by him and for him. Now we get out there as little children and we think, oh, we're these independent selves and we have no need of God because we're so big and mighty, and we start to create our own idolatry of ourselves. Well, what's the opposite of that? I think Proverbs 3:5 and 6 tells us that. It says to trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. So if you're not leaning on your understanding, you're leaning on the Lord's understanding. It says, in all your ways, acknowledge him. So as you're driving through life, acknowledge him. Acknowledge that you and him are now one. Acknowledge that you're not this independent I that has to get through life on its own and become its own God and get all the security, significance, and happiness that it can get. No, realize that in Christ you have all those things. And that will make your life a totally different life, because then you start to line yourself up with truth, with reality that you and Christ are now one, and that he will not allow you to go too far to the right or too far to the left. In fact, it says, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Well, thanks for watching this video. If you'd like more, you can go to www.promisedgrace.com. Thanks, and God bless.